Hi team. So for this week question, velocity is a proxy for productivity of your team. As per my opinion, I don't think velocity is a proxy for productivity. We can't consider. If I take in the typical science language, velocity is the speed of something in a given direction. Okay. On the other hand, productivity is something state or quality of being productive. How productive am I in the specified time or in the specified speed or something like that. Okay, like burn down charts, cumulative flow diagram, it's just a metrics. Similarly, velocity is also just a metrics to reach my goal or a destination, or I can predict this is what my velocity and this much work I can accommodate for this iteration or for this sprint. Okay, maybe for planning purpose I can use this velocity to calculate how much story points or user story, not story points, user stories I can pick for this sprint. And again, it's a kind of lean thinking as well, I could say, knowing that how much your team can accommodate few things. Okay, velocity is something very static until the team is so constant. If suppose some changes, say for instance I want to automate something, I'm bringing up some innovations, I want to do some kind of POC for that innovation, then that time definitely my velocity will change for sure. Okay, it is static till nothing has changed, nothing is brought into picture. And again, if I'm bringing some changes like pair programming or some other testing, different testing kind of things, then the velocity will get changed. Velocity is more of quantity of work completed, quantity of work completed. Okay, productivity is something like how efficiently we are doing something. Okay, but velocity is how much you did. If we look into this picture, look into these things, how efficiently we are doing things really matters, not how much work you did. Okay, before, whenever we are pitching into whatever work, it may be house chores even, or is it a big business, or if you are an entrepreneur, we have to have these three questions in place. Is it right to compare the teams or compare ourselves with respect to the velocity what we are delivering or what they deliver? Okay, is it right comparison? And is productive of the team adding value to the customers? Okay, we are doing so much of things, so many things, but I'm doing, see, my customer asks us something, but I'm doing so many things and so many items I'm delivering, but how much value really it is adding to me or to my customer? That question we have to pose to whatever work we are doing. Anybody cares about business value delivered by the team. Okay, it's not like this sprint I took some 100 story points and I achieved this 100 story points and delivered, but how much business value it added. That is the thing we need to consider. So three things we need to consider all the time. So productivity is something very efficient use of resource or capital, any investments we are doing, or land or material, even a resource, time, everything. Okay, how efficiently we are using this time or resource or material, that is how we have to calculate. Say for an instance, if I want to have this as an example, of course I read so many things before drafting a video or before drafting something. This as well I got from LinkedIn, which makes some sense for me at least. If I'm carrying, say, assume I'm having some piles of rock over there, I'm carrying few rocks by hand, so it may be I may carry some 2 kg of rocks from one place to another place. Okay, if I'm continuing on the same thing with my hands, I will be carrying 2 kgs. That is what I am about to deliver. That is my velocity I can do. If I'm using some sacks, okay, if I'm using some sacks, probably I could carry more than 5 kg, okay, more than 2 kg, like 5 kgs I can do and I can deliver. The rocks, again, same rocks, okay. So my velocity will be 5 kg. I improved 5 kgs because I'm using sack here to lift this item. Assume I'm having some gold box, piles of gold box and piles of silver box and piles of rocks. If I'm carrying, using the same sack, if I'm carrying the gold, then the value what I'm adding or delivering to the thing is something different. So that is very productive. The same sock, same hour I'm going to spend to carry the item, but the value what I did is something different. Okay, it's efficient spending up. Similarly, compared to rock, if I'm carrying a pile of or a sack of 5 kgs of silver, that value is something different. So how efficiently I'm using and what is the value I'm adding to this customers, okay, productively, that matters, not the item what we deliver. So as per me, velocity is not the proxy for productivity. Productivity is something different. Okay, a person can do n number of works per day, but how much value he added to himself, or how much productively he did or he accomplished this task, how efficiently he did. Okay, everyone is cooking in a simple term or in a layman example, but how long we are spending that one and what dish we are making and how tasty it is at the end. So that needs to be really calculated, or really we have to keep in mind when we are doing something. So productivity is something different, as it cannot be compared with the velocity what we deliver. So we cannot ask the team, this is how productive you are based on the velocity and all. Okay, thank you.
For today's question, if velocity is a proxy for productivity, the TLDR response is no, and it can never be a proxy for productivity. Let's break it down. Productivity, or being productive, is the amount of input efforts in comparison to the output, and understanding what's the rate of output for the input efforts that have just gone from the team or for the work. Now, while it is a very good metric for teams who are working on machines, whereas for people who are working on software, and especially in an agile world, it's not a good metric. The reason for that is the requirements, market, environment, expectations, the prioritizations, and a lot many other factors, they keep on changing, and hence it's not an apt metric. So what is velocity? Velocity is basically the metric of work done, which is generally measured in story points. In other words, velocity is just an amount of product backlog items, or PBIs, which are converted into potentially releasable done increments at the end of the sprint. For velocity, we should not be focusing on the number. We should rather be focusing on delivering the value. Instead of increasing or decreasing the number of story points, we should be trying to use this metric to find the scope for automations. Automations such as continuous integration, maybe towards Git merge, automations such as continuous deployment, such as Jenkins, automations such as automated testing, maybe using Selenium or JUnit. With these automations in place, we would not only increase our velocity, we would also be able to deliver value faster and in a more effective way. At the end, velocity is just made up of is just a sum of arbitrary numbers which are fictitious for one particular team. Now, that fictitious number, the story point, would definitely change from an organization to another one, a team to a different team, projects, accounts, clients, and many other factors. Now, when we are actually considering velocity, it should be considered, and it is significant metric for a product owner, because a product owner would then determine if that particular number, velocity, when taken into account, he would be able to determine if a certain functionality would be ready by X number of sprints, or would it take more time. And what can we do? Maybe putting up apt automations or reprioritizing our product backlog, so that when we need that certain functionality in production, we should be able to we should be able to release it in the market. Another factor is the same velocity or the same metric can also be used by our business to make strategic decisions and understand and determine again to understand when that particular functionality can be released into the market. Maybe a certain offer or certain piece of software or feature, when can that be put up in the market for the end users to use.
Hello everyone. So today's question is, do you think that velocity is the proxy for productivity of your team? So first of all, let's see what is velocity. Velocity is the indication of the average amount of product backlog that turn into an increment of product during a sprint. Velocity is a key metrics for Scrum team. Velocity is an option to measure progress, not the value of the team. So, velocity helps to decide how many product backlog items may how many product backlog items we need to forecast for the sprint. Now let's see what is productivity. So, in general, the productivity is the relationship between the amount of output and amount of input needed to produce a product. So, productivity for a Scrum team is measured by its ability to deliver a quality product that meets the team's commitment and the approval of the product owner. So, product it can be used like velocity can be used to introduce some predictability into a development effort. We cannot say like velocity is the proxy for productivity because it's like it's a predictability into a development effort, but it has nothing to do with productivity. So velocity can functionate depending on um, sorry velocity can fluctuate depending on changes in resources availability, like depending on holidays, the plan leave, sick leaves, etc. But the productivity should remain relatively constant, or we can say ideally the productivity should increase day by day, because as like over time the team becomes more skilled and efficient, so productivity should always increase, but velocity can fluctuate depending on the changes and resources. So to answer this question, like, do you think that the velocity is the proxy for productivity of your team? So as per my understanding, as per my understanding, or my answer for this question is no. Velocity is not the proxy for productivity. Productivity is different than the velocity. Thank you.
Velocity is nowhere a proxy for the productivity. Velocity, it is being used as a complementary practice on the real time. But on the ground, you see that is nowhere a proxy for the productivity. Productivity can be defined as an MVP if the particular Scrum team is releasing an MVP in 2 months. During the course of the 2 months, you can have 15, 20, 35 divided by 3, you get some number, that is a velocity. But that it is nowhere that we consider, yes, for example, you have got 20, based on the 20, nobody is happy with the 20, only management who is so obsessed with the metrics or the numbers is happy. But you see, at the end of the MVP release, if the Scrum team is doing the better job by releasing MVP to the market, that way there we see the real productivity of a team. Then the MVP, the more you release the MVPs to the market, how frequently are you releasing it to the market, there you see the real productivity of any Scrum team, not the velocity at all.
Hi all, this is Kirti here, and today's question is velocity a mark of productivity? So according to me, it is absolutely not the mark of a productivity. Two teams can have a velocity of 20 and a velocity of 200 doing same amount of work, but since that is the way they measure, that doesn't mean the team who is having a velocity of 200 is doing 100 times more work than 10 times more work than the previous team. So it is absolutely not the velocity is not the mark of productivity. First thing, I would just like to go back and explain a velocity a bit. So velocity is the amount of work. It's basically the number which the teams calculates and delivers in a sprint. So that number can and that number is usually measured in story points. So that is something which is specific to the team. First of all, it's a summation of complexity, risk, and efforts taken to close that story as done. So it totally depends from story to story, epic to epic, and team to team to measure the way they want. And that's the freedom of Agile, because you self-organize the teams and you empower the teams to take their own decisions. So that doesn't mean that the teams who are making it as higher number are actually the ones who are delivering more. So the next thing is I would like to touch base upon is that it can actually, over the period of time, as the team matures, there are some expectation sets from the SMs in many of the organizations that as your team matures, your velocity should increase day by day. So it can actually go other way around, because as the team matures, so their definition of done is getting stringent day by day, and they are adding to their definition of done. So the same amount of work which they might be doing in 3 days, they are actually taking 5 days, because they are adding a lot of security quality checks in it, which was earlier not the part of their definition of done. So definitely their velocity is basically going to reduce for the same amount of work, because it's the story points, we don't calculate only the man days, right? So that's the catch, that as your team matures, it's not.
Hi all, this week's question is velocity a proxy for productivity? We all know teams' efficiency is measured using velocity. It gives us an indication that how much work can be completed by a team over a period of time. Velocity is just an indication of development team's ability to turn the product backlog items into potentially releasable increment in each iteration. So there is nothing to do with performance of the team with considering the velocity. For example, if you are considering 2 vehicles, efficiency of those vehicle will be based on different parameters or aspect. I mean to say, it can be fuel economy or mileage, etc. Likewise, we know that we should not compare the velocity of 2 teams, but sometimes we can use the velocity of other team as a starting point for what has to be done in the future. We can just consider it, but we should not compare the velocity of 2 different teams. There can be various situations where velocity will be increasing or staying the same, but performance will be not as expected. For example, if velocity is increasing, maybe the quality might go down, or the work done is not potentially releasable. And if velocity is increasing, but the Scrum team delivered work did not satisfy the customer needs. What I mean, velocity is measured in terms of story points. We know how important to measure the team's efficiency. Likewise, we have to track the team's performance, and it is very much important in Scrum. Productivity is not just how many story points team have completed in particular sprint, but it is that what value or the actual delivery the team is able to produce or during the particular sprint life cycle. Story points are helping the team to forecast how much work that can be taken during that particular sprint. It is not just to measure any kind of productivity. There are various metrics that are used to increase the productivity. It can be unit test case coverage, teams happiness index, continuous integration status, and regarding like how the definition of done is tracked, and feature usage index, etc., and also thumbs up from the stakeholders to the new increment. So there can be various ways how you can increase your productivity by keeping the work log for at least a minimum 1 week or 5 days, and analyze your activities on day-to-day basis, and try to prioritize your remaining activities and calculate what is the time required for any remaining low priority activities. So in general, I can conclude that velocity is not a good proxy for a productivity. Thank you.